Evening, everybody. I'm going to kick us off because it's gone 7:30. So I'm sure there's going to be a whole load more people flooding in the next few minutes. So I don't think we've put out quite enough chairs, but let's see. Are we all good up in the sky? We all happy? Yeah. All right to crack on. I think that's a thumb rather than a one. Was that a thumb, Dan? So, look, please help yourself to refreshments through the evening. It's there for you. It is very lovely to see you all. I'm not sure I actually need the mic. I could actually just talk. No, I'll keep going with the mic just to make sure. So, look, thank you for being here. It is our annual general meeting, as you know. And I know we've got a bunch of people joining the live stream as well, so welcome at home. And the plan for this evening is I'm just going to do a quick intro, just remind you who some of our trustees are and a little bit about what we've been up to. And then I'm going to hand over to each of the subcommittee chairs. And we've also got Jill joined us tonight as our auditor as well, which is great. So we're just going to give you a bit of a flavour of what's been going on, some of the headlines. We could talk at you for the whole evening and give you a lot of content. What I'd prefer to do is give you some content and the most pertinent stuff, and then leave us time to ask whatever questions are on your mind, because I kind of wonder if that's where a lot of the value will be. So, please ask anything you want to tonight. Either there'll be someone in the room who can answer it, or we'll take it away and get the answer. Oh dear. Can I have the slides, please, guys? Right, so I think a lot of you are aware of who our leadership team are, but just putting this up just to double check that you know who all of your lovely leaders are. I'll let you cast your eyes over that for a moment. I won't go around each one of them and tell you a fun fact about each of them. We don't have time. And you might notice some crossover on the next slide. Because we've then got our trustees, and some of our trustees are also leaders, and whilst at times I think that can be maybe for that person an internal, I don't know if I should use the word conflict, but you're sort of holding two maybe opposing thoughts in your mind. It's also super helpful to be able to bridge the gap between the two agendas that are going on and kind of think about how we bring everything together. And all we have to do is just make sure we're really clear about what is a leader and what is a trustee. And for those people who are both, they just occasionally have to remind themselves which hat they're wearing. But I actually want to say a massive thank you to all those trustees, because being a trustee is time-consuming, brain-consuming, and it's sometimes a really hard job. And actually, she's walked in at the most perfect moment, because I also wanted to say a big thank you to Lydia, who has been a trustee for a lot of this year and has recently stepped down, hence not being on that slide. But I want to thank all the trustees for everything they do. They give up an incredible, I cannot tell you how many hours to bring good governance, to bring thought leadership, to get stuck into problems, to try and solve stuff, to try and make sure things run well. And it is an incredible gift that they bring to the church that we literally wouldn't function. And if I think about the last year, particularly with all of the recruitment, the number of people that we have employed now, it is just a phenomenal job that these people do. And I genuinely am in awe of them and can't thank them enough. And what we've got is a mixture of people who are specialists in what they do, which is wonderful. But they are also generalists, and they're able to input to other people's kind of work and agendas and bring their thoughts. And what I love about this group of trustees is that we have great support and great challenge to each other, and we're not afraid to do both of those things in a really safe environment. So it is an honour for me to be part of that team, and I just want to thank the trustees so much for all that they do. And we're not perfect. We make mistakes. We just try to learn fast from that because this church is growing, our organisation is growing. Are we a church? Are we an organisation? We're both. It's a hard line to walk, but we try and do it as best we can, and with obviously everything else that happens out of this church as well. And as we go along, we just try to keep learning together and growing together and getting better and serving as well as we can. So a big thank you to our trustees. So, what are we going to go through tonight? Go back. Aha, thank you. Thanks, Karen. So, Adam is obviously on sabbatical, so he's done a little video for us. So we're going to watch that in a moment. Then we're going to go through each of the reports from the committees. And then, as I said earlier, we will try and leave as much time as possible for the Q&A session. Everyone okay with that? Nice.
Hi there, everyone. So sorry I'm not able to be with you this evening, but I am hopefully now deep in sabbatical at the end of what has been a Sabbath year for us as a church also. It may seem odd to hear me talk of a Sabbath year when so much happens here, so much of the time, but actually the busiest we've ever been in terms of building groups, community engagement, small groups, people engaging in Sundays, and numbers there. But we have made real efforts to breathe this year and to refocus on being a church, a worshipping community, a connected community, and a Jesus-centred community. In many ways, we have tried to focus on the foundations, to put the systems in place, to reconnect, to pause, and reflect on what we do well and where we can improve. It feels like we're in so many ways emerging into a new era. This is certainly true for us culturally in the West, and it's true globally. Everything is changing so quickly, and we are all trying to adjust. But it's also true for us in the church, as we see dramatic shifts in how we gather, how we serve our communities, how we connect, and how we engage with what God is doing. There is a sense we're in a new reformation, and we are all trying to adjust and adapt. This is why we've tried to have a year of Sabbath. My own goals and objectives perhaps demonstrate this. We're focusing heavily on our line management systems and processes and implementing a new appraisal process throughout the team, and focused on reimagining how we do teaching and content, not just as a sermon once a week on a Sunday, but how can we use other formats throughout the week to enable us to go deeper into the Bible, who God is and who He's calling us to be. I'm focused on how we engage with our community, especially how we transition from a dual council system to a unitary system. How do we manage those relationships, but also how do we help our community navigate the gaps and pressures it creates? Where can we work collaboratively to meet needs as they arise? It is worth noting at this point that the Gateway and how it is utilised throughout the week is receiving increasing and significant attention as a primary model of what the government refers to as family hubs or community hubs. Rachel is speaking at the Conservative Party conference next week at a fringe event. We're in conversations with churches nationally, denominations, charities, think tanks and councils about how others can learn from what we do right here in Yeovil. If you don't often have a chance to see what happens here through the week, then I would encourage you to find a small window and pop in if you can. And even get involved if at all possible. It's a beautiful place to be. Rachel's also focused on development of Y4F, as well as supporting the Roost and the Resettlement Hub and Poppins. I'm also focused on supporting Lisa to develop our pastoral areas, including small groups, newcomers and Sunday mornings. John to improve our personnel processes and care of our staff, developing our IT and managing a significant budget across a wide number of areas, as well as development of the Gateway. Supporting Joe, who is growing us as a worshipping community, creating resources for the church nationally, developing our online aspects and raising up leaders for the now and for the future. And supporting Claire, who leads our expansive, exciting youth work, as well as overseeing children's work, which has a strong and growing reputation. All of this can only happen because of all of you, our church family, who pray, who have journeyed this crazy journey with us and leaned into the challenges and opportunities, who give us so generously, who volunteer in so many ways. All of this can only happen because of all of you, our church family, who pray, who have journeyed this crazy journey with us and leaned into the challenges and opportunities, who give so generously, who volunteer in so many ways across so many areas, so faithfully. So thank you. God bless you. And I look forward to being with you again the other side of this sabbatical as we step into the new year and the new era with a renewed sense of hope and expectation.
Okay, so Yeah, I'm going to ask the team to come up and share. I think in terms of questions, if there's a burning question while people are sharing, please feel free to ask it there and then. We don't have to store everything up for Q&A, so yeah, feel free to do both if there's question for clarification as we're going through. So, Jill, please can everyone welcome Jill.
Okay, good evening everybody. I'm Jill, I'm from Milstead Langton, we're your auditors. And the reason you have auditors is the church has passed quite an important milestone. It's breached the audit threshold, so your income for the year to December 21 was over £1 million. It was just below previously. In fact, you had income of £1.1 million last year to the year to December 21. And within that, you had over 250,000 of donations and legacies for people wanting to contribute to the church. You had over £800,000 of income from grants, from the various partnerships you have in place. And you also had nearly £27,000 from the government. You've heard of things like furlough scheme and all that sort of stuff. Because of the pandemic, you've had that income through. So yeah, it was £1,107,000. So you're now subject to audit, which is a higher level of scrutiny. And we're currently finalising the accounts and audit. And on the flip side, you had all this lovely income and you spent over £900,000 delivering what was being described earlier. And even after doing all of that, you had a surplus of £203,000 from the year to December 21, which means you can use that money going forward to continue what you're actually doing. And in total assets, you are now standing at £1.465 million of assets, obviously, which includes the gateway itself. So that's about £900,000. So you've got £500,000 of sort of free assets, as we call them, to actually do the good works. So I was just going to do a brief overview for you, which is that. So if there are any questions, please give me a shout. Otherwise, I'll hand over to Rosie. I'll leave those there for you. Okay.
Thank you. Can I have my stuff? Oh, thank you. Cool. So, yeah, this is our first year that we've had an audit, so it was a bit of a scary experience, I think. It wasn't too bad in the end, but it was definitely a learning curve for the finance team. It's something we've kind of journeyed together, and I think we've had a lot of questions. We've learned a lot, and hopefully it wasn't too bad from the auditor's side of view. But yeah, I think as a FinCom, that's what we call ourselves, Finance Committee, sorry. We definitely learned a lot, and actually it was a really positive year. So, introduction to Finance Committee, if you don't know us already. So Simon is meant to do this. He's meant to be standing here. He's the committee chair, but he's decided that he will go away and leave me to it. So he's gone away. But he kind of runs our little team, but he's primarily in charge of kind of budgets and overview of that side of things. I am generally looking after the stat side of things, so I will liaise with the auditors the most and kind of the statutory accounts more than anyone else. And then Sarah with financial risk and financial controls, and then we have Keith, who is joining me tonight, who looks after kind of expenses and giving primarily. So they're the kind of areas we look after each as a team, but ultimately I think we're quite a good team. Hopefully Keith nods his head at that point. But yeah, we work really well together. We meet up at least once a month, but if anything kind of goes, if we need to talk more than that, then we obviously will, but generally once a month we have a meeting and discuss all things finance, which I'm sure is very entertaining to you all, and I won't go into too much detail in what we cover. Next slide, please. So, what have we done in the last 12 months? I won't read through the slides because hopefully you will see them on your TVs, but obviously you all can see them here. But one of the fundamental things that we've done is change software systems. So we have moved from Sage to Zero this year, which, just a shout out to Trisha, who's not here tonight. That was a huge change for her, and she has dealt with it exceptionally well, because we definitely threw her in the deep end. So just a massive thank you from my point of view, because I think when I asked her to change, or we had conversations around changing, it was very much, she was quite scared initially. So yeah, just a massive thank you to Trisha on that one. Cool. So again, I'm not going to read through everything on the slide, but that gives you a little bit of an insight into our giving as a church. And so, yeah, at the moment we are, I think it says, yeah, average of 20,000 a month in terms of giving itself. We obviously are very aware at the moment that we are in a cost of living crisis. So from our point of view, obviously that is something we are talking about a lot at the moment with the impact of that, and ultimately we don't actually know the impact of that, so that's something we're having ongoing conversations about. But just from kind of our point of view, that is very consistent and very, yeah, just a massive thank you from us, I think, because that consistent giving is extremely helpful in terms of giving us that, what's the word, consistent income. So yeah, just a massive thank you from that point of view. So, 2022 so far. So we are heading in a similar direction in terms of our income will likely be over $1 million this year. So that's, I suppose, great in terms of that we're not dropping, but it does mean that we're likely to still see Joe again next year. So in terms of our trajectory, it is similar in terms of year on year. As you're probably all very aware that some of that proportion is to do with Y4F, and that does give us a substantial amount of income. And kind of the split in terms of the income, somebody did send in a question, which I will get into kind of at the end of these slides, about kind of the relationship between Y4F and YCC. So I will go into that after I've gone through the slides. But in general, we are, at the moment, income's about 640, and our main expenditure is always going to be wages, because as you saw on, I think, the previous slide, we do employ 39, yeah. So you are all paying attention. Yeah, 39 people. So it's, yeah, quite a substantial amount of employees, which is always going to take up a substantial amount of cost. So, obviously, we are heading towards the end of this year, so we just wanted to give you an insight in kind of the things that we might be concentrating on going into the new year, and kind of the things we might be having conversations about now. I've already mentioned the cost of living crisis that we ultimately don't know the extent of the effect of, and it's something we're, like I say, having conversations about. But other things, as you can see up there, yeah, hopefully that's fairly self-explanatory. But if there's any questions on any of that, then obviously ask. I don't think there's another slide. No, that's cool. Hello. Do you want to help me on this one?
Sorry, Steve, can you be a bit more specific? There's a question about Jesus Collective and Adam's involvement.
Okay, I saw nothing on the 2023 income about Jesus Collective, because we realised that my understanding is that Adam's going to be paid for his input into Jesus Collective, so therefore there's going to be some income stream coming across to YCC.
So
And how will that look?
Okay, so we haven't sorted out the finer details yet of exactly how that income comes in, but essentially Jesus Collective will cover Adam's salary and costs for any time he gives them. So so we are no worse off, no better off. It's just an equilibrium, but they're paying for his time. Does that answer the question?
Well, I'm just wondering how they're going to pay for it. I mean, is it going to be...
We've got a number of options.
That's fine.
So either they can pay us and we can pay him, or they can pay him directly, or actually that's probably it. I think there was a third one at some point that we kicked around. We haven't settled on that yet. Everything we're doing is a 6-month trial from January to June, and we're going to review it monthly. And then at the end of the 6 months, we're going to decide what's the way forward we want to go, and just see how it's working for everyone.
Perfect.
Okay.
Just before I take any more questions, I'm just going to jump to a question that we got emailed in earlier today, or whenever it was emailed in. So in terms of the YFREF income and the YCC kind of dynamic, firstly, we are one charity, so we don't have it's not YFREF is one charity and YCC is another charity. Ultimately, they interlink, and it's we make holistic decisions on all of that. So the question I've been asked is, what is the effect of if we didn't have the YFREF income, or what does the accounts look like without the YFREF income and the vaccination income as a and I can answer that in terms of top line figures, but in terms of why they are very top line figures is because in terms of allocating costs to particularly the vaccinations, that's actually a very difficult thing to do, because we ultimately hire out the room. That's how we account for it. We hire out the room to the vaccinations, but that might give us extra coffee shop income because foot traffic increases in the coffee shop, or we might use an extra light and heat because they need to use the room more than we might have if they weren't here. So in terms of what that looks like pound by pound, it's very difficult to do, but just a point on what the finances look like for that. In terms of 2021, and with the 2021 income, you heard Jill talk about the whole movement of 203,000 increase in funds over the year. Out of that, we had restricted funds increase by 266,000, and the unrestricted funds go down 55,000. But I say this because it is a big but. This is a picture in time at the 31st of December 2021, and there will be funds forward from the previous year, and there will be funds carried forward into the next year. So it's not we look at 12 months in isolation. We had 79,000 brought forward from 2020 that we as a charity are responsible for using. So in terms of what we ended up with, we had 55,000 deficit over 2021 of the unrestricted funds, but we still have 24,000 left in the unrestricted fund pocket, if that makes sense. So the restricted funds ultimately is a lot of YFREF income, and that went up, but our contracts run to March. I'm looking at John because he looks after the contracts. Our contracts do run to March, so whenever we look at December, we would ultimately expect a whole chunk of money sitting there for us to use in the final 3 months of every contract. Does that make sense?
I think I wonder if part of the question is, if we didn't have Y4F, because obviously we have management costs attributed to that, or if we didn't have the vaccine monies coming in, how stable are we? What does our finance look like if you exclude those?
Yeah. So I think in terms of the context I gave at the start is that we are a charity overall, and we make decisions based on the whole picture. So we have made decisions based on the fact that Y4F do fund some of the decisions we make. So in terms of sustainability at this point in time, until the contract ends, we are in a really positive position because we've accounted and made decisions on that basis. If SSDC, is that the right terminology now they've merged and stuff? If they decided that we weren't going to renew the contract, we would have to risk assess that, make decisions based on that new piece of information. We don't necessarily anticipate that happening. We have conversations a lot with SSDC. It's not they could end it tomorrow and the funding would end tomorrow. We have the finances up to March 23 at this point, and we expect it to extend past that based on current conversations. So that's what the picture looks like. Like I say, I can give more detail in finances, but we make decisions on the whole picture, not on that stream. Does that make sense?
You just partly answered my question because my question will be 5 into 1 unitary council. What happens when, say, on the pessimistic side, they pull the funding? What mitigation takes place for the continuation of Yeovil for Family?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, do you want to?
So at the moment we are funded primarily by South Somerset District Council. The budget that Y4F is funded from within SSDC's monies is a protected budget. So as they roll into the first year of operating in the unitary authority, that funding is protected. So we are anticipating that we'll have the vast majority of our income for Y4F into to March 2024. We don't have it in writing yet, but that's our understanding of how the funding stream will go forward. And the funding we get for the Welcome Hub, that's also from Somerset County Council. That's secure now until August next year. And we have additional funding from a housing association, which we would have to renegotiate for next year. But at the moment, as we see it, the vast majority of our income for Y4F is secure to March 24. I could answer the income we get for the vaccines. I think it's about half our overall rental income in the last year. I can't remember the exact figures. And we make a profit even if we're fully heating this building in the middle of winter. We would still be clearing profit. So it helps us. But going next year, we don't anticipate we would be hosting them very long. It probably will be a similar winter flu COVID top-up as we've seen this just started yesterday.
Anything else?
A really high level of roughly 800,000 was given as a number from grants and partnerships. Roughly what percentage of that is through Y4F and associated?
That's a very good question. Off the top of my head, I think it would be around 60-70% of that. But I will find out for you and give you an updated answer, Noah. So sorry, I don't have a specific. Anything else? Cool. Thanks.
Hi everybody. Got a slide? There we go. Thank you. So I think, as has been mentioned already, our numbers for this year, so we're looking at the period between October 21 and September 22. Our numbers are 39 permanent employees. That doesn't include, obviously, volunteers. I should mention before, was around about 150. The year before it was 38. So on the surface, it seems like it's not a very big difference, not much change, only a change of one person. But if you get below that particular overall number, there's quite a lot of change within the organisation in that period. So if we look at the joiners, we had 11 joiners within that time period. Most of those are replacing people we already had before, but 3 of them are brand new roles. And in terms of leavers, we had 10 leavers. So you can see there's quite a lot below the actual overall number. And the thing about that is it then takes a lot of people's time to recruit people, find people. And that's generally down to John, as well as others. So yes, that's the first point tonight, I think, is that there's quite a lot of activity below the headline number. This just gives a breakdown by sort of area. There's not really too much variation between the sort of various areas. Just the only point to note, I suppose, which I think we may have mentioned last year, was the fact obviously now we've got Keith in the chaplain's role, and we've got sort of dedicated pastoral support, which we didn't have before. Right, okay, so there's a few things here. Maybe I need to take this off. So this year we did a comprehensive salary review, which had effect from 1st of April. As part of that, we did a benchmarking exercise looking at various different people's rates of pay and how they compared to the marketplace. Sometimes we can't necessarily get exact references, but quite often we can. But as part of that exercise then, obviously when we're looking at salary increases, we're looking at what inflation is, CPI, but we're also looking at what people's income is. And so we have quite a number of people who are lowest paid, who are on the national living wage or minimum wage, you may have heard of before. And it was felt this time that we should look at, as a Christian organisation, how we look after our people. So the national living wage is mandatory by the government, that we have to pay that to our lowest paid. And it's also done in conjunction with business to ensure it's affordable. But there's an organisation called the Real Living Wage Foundation, and they do their own real living wage figure, rate of pay. And that's different than the national living wage. It's actually higher, and they do it just solely on the cost of living that they feel is required. So we took the decision to move the lowest paid from the national sort of living wage to the real living wage. And for this year, I think the national minimum wage would have been about 6%, 6.6%. And the real living wage was 8.67%. So about a 2% difference in terms of the increase that it gave. I think you have to also bear in mind that if there's a difference between the percentages that are shown there, one looks lower than the other, that doesn't necessarily turn out to value in people's pockets, because obviously if people are receiving a higher income, even if it's a lower percentage, it can be bigger than the person who's getting the lower income. So the next thing then is in terms of sickness and absence. It's got down there the number of days and the percentage. Basically, in terms of sort of the regional average, that's about the norm. I think the actual figure for the Southwest is 2%. There are sort of national differences, but it just shows that our sickness rates are not excessive. We had a number of long-term sick who are not all back. And we obviously had some additional sickness for COVID, so that was around about the March, sort of April time this year. So it's mentioned earlier about appraisals, and obviously one of our focuses has been to improve training and development. And so as part of that, we've updated the appraisal process. Appraisals were being done before, particularly in Y4F, sort of less so within the rest of YCC. So that's been updated and now is being rolled out across the organisation, and that sort of started in July, and it's been cascaded down through all the teams. So out of that, we would expect to see some training requirements. So we're looking in particular at trying to develop people, develop the training, and that will also include line management. So I think, as we mentioned last year, there's been quite a change in how we operate as trustees and the operational team. So a lot of the work that was originally done by trustees is now done by the strategic leadership team. And so therefore, that's the sort of key point to note in terms of where the workload is sort of taking place, and therefore where we need to look at training and development for people. So there has been some further work in terms of policies and procedures. Some of those procedures relate to training and development, in particular looking at trying to just centralise our training and development systems so that we understand if we've got some training that needs renewing, like first aid, that we can make sure that's done on time and in the right frequency. And that's sort of an ongoing process. But again, that is something that takes time, takes people's time. So it's something we need to bear in mind when we're looking at the organisation and how we're staffed and how we're able to undertake the tasks that we take. And also this year, we looked at increasing the number of safeguarding deputies. So obviously, Rachel has been the main sort of safeguarding lead. And then we have one of the Y4F team, it's now Joella, who's also looks after the Y4F safeguarding. But in terms of cover, if somebody's off sick or somebody's away, we were sort of light in that area. So we've now created two further deputies in Claire and Lisa, so that we've got further support for safeguarding, and which is a big improvement in the area. It also helps to spread the load so that people are not necessarily carrying as much as they were before, and it's a good improvement. I think, yeah, that's it. Unless there are any questions. Hi, Steve.
Sorry, it's me again. I might be just distant from communication, but could we have an update on the employment of a children and families worker?
Okay, so we did a recruitment process was carried out earlier this year, but at the time we couldn't find a suitable candidate. So we said we would wait probably up to 12 months to look at replacing the person. So I think we'll probably start reviewing things again at the end of the year and probably start recruitment in the new year. But that's still being discussed and debated internally in terms of the exact timing of it. But I mean, there is the intent to fill that role at some point.
Is that the same for Y4F? The top person, the leader?
The programme lead, yeah, okay. So we did a recruitment process this year for a programme lead. We were unsuccessful in securing a particular person. We had two candidates that came forward. None were suitable to fill the role. There's quite a lot of prayer went up, and I had a particular prayer here for it quite a few months back now, but to understand what to do. And there was some thought process that maybe it could come internally, but looking at what we were going to do. So what's happening at the moment is that the two senior link workers are going to be given additional responsibilities so that they can jointly sort of run Y4F, and that will run for approximately 6 months as a trial to see how it works. If it works well, it may continue, but that's where we're at the moment with it. So we're doing a process for 6 months by increasing the responsibilities of the senior link workers that are in place, and we'll see how that goes at the end of that time. Okay, very good.
Hi. For those of you who don't know, I'm Karen Hibbert and I chair the Building Assets Health and Safety Committee. I have Ollie Peat, who's our Building and Services Manager, and John Pocock, who's our Operational Strategic Lead on the committee. I want to say thanks to Lydia, who was on our committee and stepped down early this year, and also to Phil Maddox, who obviously provided a lot of building and environmental knowledge, which was really helpful for us as well. So thank you to them both, and for Ollie and John persevering with me. So what's happened in the Gateway over the last 12 months? As you'd expect with a building that's used ever such a lot, there's always ongoing building maintenance, thinking about decorating and changing to LED lighting and things like that. That's always ongoing. And obviously there's been an increased building use by the NHS, by community, by church ministries. So fitting everything in has been an ongoing challenge. And part of that was the challenge that we didn't have a small hall because that was being used by the Lord's Larder. And so we did a small building development earlier this year, which included providing a shower and laundry facilities for the clients of the Roost. We also fitted a small kitchen out behind you in the auditorium, which has been really helpful. And we also increased the footprint of the Lord's Larder by 2.5 times to enable them to go and fit back into their space. And then finally there was a small office that's been built above the small hall for extra space for the Create team. So that was some building work that took place, then released the small hall for us to use for groups, which we're really pleased about. And I do want to say thank you to the Yeovil Christian Support Trust, who gave a donation, a large donation to the building work, and that's much appreciated. Another thing that's happened obviously is the Ukraine Welcome Hub has come into this building, and there's also English as a second language classes and all kinds of other groups that are meeting here. So there's been a lot going on in the building. We renewed our energy contracts. And I'm sure all of you understand all the pressures to do with the energy, and all of you a lot of you have had concerns about your contracts. So ours were due for renewal, and John had a huge challenge trying to obtain new contracts when the prices kept changing and they were only being held for 24 hours, something like that. So yes, he did a wonderful job. We have got new contracts. I think our electricity contract doubled, 2.5 times, yeah. The gas, I think 3 times, yeah. So actually, I think we're going to be quite grateful because the government I think churches are included in the cap, aren't they? Yes. So thank you for that. Yeah, so that's good, but that was a lot of work. Thinking about our environmental work, we haven't progressed as much as we would like with our environmental actions, and so we decided to have an environmental workshop with the strategic leads, because they're the ones on the ground operationally to support the work of the leadership team and the trustees, and the aim of that is to decide what actions, what it is we want to be doing and how we can do that. Our CO2 emissions for 2021 were 178 tonnes, and that compares with 100 tonnes in 2019. So our carbon footprint is going in the wrong direction, as you might have noticed. So that is something that we are trying to address, is how do we address that? A lot of it is to do with purchasing, so it's thinking how we can have systems to help us with that. And Andrew's mentioned about safeguarding. So yes, we do have more safeguarding deputies recruited. In fact, there are 2 for Y4F. There's Joella Summers and Vicky Pritchard, as well as Rachel, and then Lisa and Claire. So, because they've got cover for sickness and holiday and other situations. And we started using an online software package for reporting safeguarding concerns, which I think I might mention that we were planning to do. So we started using that in December. It's called My Concern. And for the first 9 months, there were 361 safeguarding concerns registered on the system, which gives you an idea of the workload of particularly Y4F, but also the church in protecting children and youth and vulnerable adults. So there's a lot of work that is going on behind the scenes. And using this online system, it's more robust, making sure that actions take place. So that's been very helpful for the team. It's just made it work a lot easier. So looking ahead for the coming year, what are our priorities? One of them is to agree our future building requirements. What is it we need to do what God has called us to do in this building? Last year, I think we mentioned that we had some options given to us by architects of how we could expand our building. But then God called us to a year of sabbatical, so those discussions were put on hold, which is why we didn't bring them to the church. So one of the John's and others' roles is to re-engage with the architects for building development within our current footprint, is what we're saying. So it'll be particularly about like above the atrium area, the small hall, the children's rooms. So just to give us more space to be able to do the things that we want to be doing, we believe God's called us to do. And we also want to try and do it in a staged way so that we can still operate. The other thing, priority we have is to develop a culture in the church and organisation that considers the environmental impact of our actions. And as I say, that is a concern that we want to address. To agree some principles for decision makers and processes for purchasing and things like that. We are going to investigate solar panels. I know over the years people have said, we could put solar panels on the roof, and because they were so heavy it wasn't feasible. But they are much lighter now, and we will need to do a survey of the roof to see if that's still practical or whether that is going to require any remedial work. But that is something we are seriously looking at. And other sustainable solutions and schemes we'll be looking at as well. And obviously, we continue to operate health and safety practices that protect employees, volunteers, visitors, and safeguarding those who are vulnerable is always a priority for us. So that's all I have. I don't know if anyone's got any questions they want to ask me right now.
You mentioned that we're going to be looking at future building development, but only within the current footprint. Is there a reason why we're not looking, given that there are land opportunities around the building?
I don't know if John wants to answer that. Would that be helpful?
We can hold it then, can't we? There was one opportunity for adjacent land, which is no longer an opportunity. There is a second opportunity in the Honda garage land being available, but the timetable for that was bid by the end of September, and we didn't feel we had the necessary time to pull together our ideas and get approval from the various processes. So we've gone back to the people selling, saying we're really interested in that land, but we haven't got time to put a bid together. But if you don't get any interest, then please come back to talk to us. on the basis that if someone came in with a really exciting commercial opportunity, we would never be able to compete with it. So if they come back to us, that's a good sign to us that maybe there is something in it God wants us to explore. In the meantime, we're going to look at how we can make the best use of the building that we have and the space that we have. Our earlier exploration was predicated on solving our car parking problem to allow us to then build onto our existing car park. At the moment, we don't have space for our car park to go anywhere else, so we have to stay within the framework of the building.
You talk about car parking, which is a bit of an issue here. So, any thoughts on that? Where are we with car parking?
We have the car park that we have, and we have the building, which is awkward to get to and awkward to get around. For the COVID vaccinations, which does put an additional pressure on our car park, we have the ability to use Stars Lane again, and we have the ski centre car park, which is a useful overflow car park, but comes with some personal security issues walking up there late at night, which we're aware of. We don't have any further plans to change our car park at the moment. Steve? The question is, do we continue to pay for the privilege of parking at the ski centre? Yes, we do. We pay not a large amount of money to the town council to rent that, yeah.
Anything else? If not, say that in the Q&A there'll be time to ask John some more questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much to all the subcommittee chairs. Really appreciate that. And thank you again to all the trustees and all the people who also join those either regularly or from time to time. Much appreciated. I should also say we've got a couple of other potential trustees coming in because we're probably a couple of trustees short at the moment. So that's been great to have a couple of people joining us over the last 2 or 3 meetings, and yeah, with a view to hopefully coming on more formally in the near future. So that will help us bolster the ranks, which is always much needed. What other questions have people got that we haven't covered in any of those 4 committee reports? Or anything more broadly? No, Pete. Thank you.
Is the coffee shop making a profit or a loss at the moment?
A loss. It fluctuates. There are some months where it's better than others. I think in terms of, this isn't a finance point, but in terms of what we use the coffee shop for and the type of things that go on in it and things like that is a non-finance question. But yeah, I think in terms of, if it was, you had to rent the coffee shop and all that kind of stuff, it turns into a whole load of thing that we don't actually record. So, but there are, I think John would probably say this if he was standing there, there are plans to see what we do about that, and it's not a static, we just accept that. We are looking at what we do to help that, but there is a bigger question as to what we use that for. Yeah.
I'll add a slightly more positive spin. So the analysis at the moment is that there's a fairly fixed cost for employing people, and our income doesn't cover those fixed costs. Over this year, the income has been increasing to the point in the last month where we've almost been covering our costs. The first day of vaccines on Tuesday, we saw a massive spike in our income, and we sold twice as many coffees and twice as many cake as we'd ever done in the previous 6 or 7 months. So on Tuesday, we made a large amount of money. I haven't looked at the figures for today, but I'm hopeful because this week we've got vaccines in and pop-ins are back in. And those are the pop-ins in particular is one of the key things that brings people into the building who then go and have a coffee and a cake. I think we're basically seeing the same retail issues that everybody else is seeing. People aren't going out yet. People are slowly coming back in. And this next 2 or 3 months, I think, will show us whether our hopes are coming true, that, yes, there is the opportunity out there.
Fantastic that we got the shower and the washing machine. Brilliant, that is good news. So when somebody comes in, one of the street community comes in for a shower, is it purely the responsibility of the receptionist to facilitate that? And if it is, do you think that's wise?
We have a process. So we have advertised hours when the shower is available, and the process involves people coming to reception to get access, to sign that they're using the shower and to get access to towels and cleaning materials, shower gel and things like that, so that we know who's been in the shower and so that we know if the shower is left in a mess, who has done that, so we can have further conversations. The shower is only open when other members of staff are in the building, in particular Bridget and Ollie, so that it's not just the receptionists who are having to deal with it. But we are aware of issues associated with people coming in off the street and wanting to use a shower, and that does lead to some interactions that we're trying to manage. So yeah, we're mindful of the situation.
Any other questions? Rosie, have we got anything coming through on live chat? No more questions on that?
Over the weekends, I always drive through when I'm working, sort of early hours of the next day. Lights are very often on upstairs. Now, whether they're bookings or just people who forgot to turn them off, would it be handy to put some time switches on upstairs so they switch themselves off anyway? Lights on in toilets, lights on in the corridor, lights on in rooms. No, obviously we don't have somebody who checks after a booking, but employ somebody and save money, or put some switches in. Thank you, Malcolm.
Yeah, I think it's a great suggestion. I think, as Karen talked about earlier, I guess that would probably come under our, in terms of our environmental goals. And so what we're constantly doing is going, where can we ensure that we aren't wasting energy, but also we know that there's a cost of moving from one to another, and I guess we also try and do things when we've got the maximum value out of the life. So I suppose, but I think that obviously it's a great suggestion. So yeah, thank you. I think, yeah, we can have a look at that, can't we, Karen? Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Diane, pardon?
Right, it's not a question, it's not a suggestion, it's just a couple of observations. First of all, I'm really thrilled that we're paying the real living wage. I think that's a great achievement. And secondly, I am also really thrilled that you're looking at having more than 8 trustees, because I know you need more than 8 trustees. So I do hope that there will be people joining the trustee body. And I'd just like to say thank you to you all, because I know how much work it is. Thank you.
Steph's got a hand up as well. Oh, sorry, yeah. Diane, thank you. Really appreciate that. Yeah, I'm confident we'll be back up to 10 It's always that thing about what's the optimum number, because what we also want to be is quite decisive and quite agile, and as you also know, once you get too many people in a room, you can never make a decision about anything, and I sort of quite like that we're able to cut through stuff. But I watch the strain on people, and there have been certain times over the last year where we've all been, hands to the pump on a number of things all at once. And probably our usual quarterly meetings and the subcommittee meetings that happened before, I think there's probably never been a year that I'd be aware of that we've had so many extraordinary meetings as well, to then, because we've got to quickly gather around something, and the team have been super responsive through that. It's been utterly incredible. So, but you're right, and I think we'll be back up to 10 quite soon. And I mean, obviously, if anyone has a burning desire to be a trustee, my door is always open for a chat. Hello, Steph.
Hello, Rob. It isn't so much a business, but it's a comment or a question. And I know Lisa's not here from a pastoral point of view. So, X number of years ago, 80 or 90% of people were in-house groups. So that's my first question. I know we're coming out of a pandemic, and we are not seeing the number of people on a Sunday morning back in the building. And I know that's a process, but I just wondered how it is perceived across all of the teams and the leadership and trustees, how people are re-engaging with church in the big, and what percentage of people are in the small. And it seems to be, the church is growing, but I turn up on a Sunday and it's about a quarter of the size that it used to be. So I get that people are finding church in different ways, whether that is online, but what else is being thought of as ideas of getting people back into the bigger community and engaging with the smaller house group? And you don't have to answer that because Lisa's not here, and obviously it's her job. But I think it's about the health of the church.
Yeah, I totally get the point. Thank you. I think you're right in that. Obviously post-COVID, everyone's finding their way back in different ways, aren't they? Everyone's got different routines. Everyone's still got different worry levels. I couldn't tell you the exact percentage of small group, but I'll ask Lisa, and I will absolutely happily share that. And I know that her and her team have been doing a lot of work on that. Obviously, we tried to do summer services a bit differently this year. I'm sure some people loved it and some people didn't. I think in the end everyone did. I don't know. But that was an attempt to try and have a bit of fun, bring a bit of community, do something a little bit different at a time when we knew that, obviously lots of people would be away. It was also based on previous feedback that I think where we'd done some of the summer services previously, some of them hadn't quite landed, or they were all very different. But the heart of that was also to just try and have fun together, to Sabbath together, to bring to life some of the stuff that we've talked about this year about people not trying to take on too much, just hang out together. So I think that was also a recognition of what you say. We've got a Leaders and Trustees Day in 8 weeks, and then we've got a Leaders Weekend early in the new year. And I think a lot of us feel that sort of conversation absolutely does need to be a part of that, because you're right, you can sometimes walk in on a Sunday morning and feel like, gosh, I don't know many people here. The new people are nervous because they think they're new, and the old people are nervous because they don't know as many people. And it does, I think there's that is something we're talking about. I don't think we've got the answer yet, but we're very aware of it. And we also know, obviously, that there's different. Our congregation has changed, hasn't it, in terms of people who are coming in through the door, which is great in some ways. Obviously, in lots of ways, bringing diversity, but there's also there's more of that we need to focus on.
Can I just make a couple of comments on that one?
Please do, man.
I think part of it is it's just taking people quite a long time. I've had a couple of conversations even the last 10 days of people who would have always been part of us, but had not started re-attending in person, and yet now are starting to say, no, I do think we want to come back now. So I think some of it's just taking a rather long time. We have obviously thought about our online provision, and is that still important? Is it helpful? And last figure I had was something like 200 people were watching online, not at the time, but over the course of the week. So we are continuing with that, but yeah, we'd be much happier to have people in the room, because I think you miss quite a lot of the stuff by not being here. The other comment I made about small groups, yes, we do need to find out what the percentage figure is, and so we need to do that. But I've stood up here more times than I'm comfortable with, apologising to people that we haven't got our small groups sufficiently well organised so that people get into them. There is, as far as I'm aware, no one waiting to go into a small group at the moment. Lisa has got so much on top of it that actually there are some groups who are wanting some people that actually we haven't. Everybody who wants to be part of a group is in a group at the moment, which is a good position to be in. But yeah, whether that's including a large enough proportion of congregation is something we need to check.
I think what we've also tried, what we've also done in terms of pastoral stuff is it's also not just been for Lisa to manage as well. I think there's been a number of us as leaders and trustees who've also thought about where we can all lean in on specific things, depending on what that person or people need as well. So yeah, there's been a fair amount of support going in for people where we hope they've needed it. Probably just looks a bit different to how it looked before, but yeah. Yes, Steve.
Yeah, very much, Rob. I mean, Malcolm's half answered the question, but who is the congregation? That's the obvious question. And like, Steph alluded to, you come in here on the Sunday. I haven't been here for the past 6 or 7 weeks. I can't remember how long it's been. But I had a choice tonight whether I come here, I only walk 2 minutes away, or else watch online. But I chose to come here. I mean, I've had conversations with lots of guys in YCC who are just not back here on a Sunday morning. It's easy for them to watch the service on a Sunday, but selfishly, it's sad for me to not be with them because I'm physically here. I know I haven't been here for 7 weeks. Physically here, and yeah, it's different. It's a struggle. If it's here to stay, then it's a journey that I've got to struggle with. And how do you pastorally care for the 200 plus out there, half of which could be living outside of the UK? Who is our congregation?
Yeah, I think it's a tension we're living in, isn't it? Because there's a bunch of people that would call our online facility a lifeline because they're scared to walk in the door for some reason. And I don't think there's no easy answer. And I get what you're saying, and I think it's something that we keep talking about, but it's something that we keep thinking about. Or how do we continue to encourage people back in a way that feels safe for them? And of course, yeah, there's lots of different views on this. So we'll keep trying and we'll keep listening. Did I see an arm go up? Thanks, Sal.
Where are we on volunteers? Do we have enough volunteers to carry out the roles that need to be done currently?
I think the answer to that is no, but better than a few months ago, but still no. And I think some of that is, you go through these cycles, don't you? If you get a bit of volunteer fatigue or, because of COVID or, lots of reasons. I couldn't tell you the exact number, but I can find out. Yeah, unless you know, Malcolm, from strategy.
No, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's been something we've been talking about as leadership, and we're thinking quite hard about how do we engage people, because part of the engagement, even whether it's turning up on a Sunday, is people feeling ownership of things, and volunteering is a great way to increase ownership. At the moment, rather than just nagging people incessantly, we don't need more volunteers all the time, which is not a good way. We need to inspire people. So we want to tell more stories of transformation that's going on in people's lives, because that motivates people to say, yeah, I'd like to be part of that. And we have seen some of that. And also we are wanting to, and Lisa would say this, perhaps approach people on a one-on-one basis, people we know where we have a relationship, and say, had you ever thought of? Rather than just making a public announcement from the front and hope somebody might respond. It's not to pressure people, but just to sort of, I was talking to somebody only last week who is actually, they haven't been volunteering for ages, but now are asking, I think I'd quite like to get involved in some shape or form. So I think it's just taking a long time. A lot of people stepped away, had to step away obviously during COVID, and some people haven't been too keen, for understandable reasons, to pick it up. But I think it will come back, but we need to build bonds of friendship amongst ourselves that draws people in. Yes, sorry, comment there. Don't underestimate the power of direct invitations. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We have sometimes put news out to our small groups and say, have you got anybody in your group who would be interested? And sometimes that yields something. But yeah, absolutely. I think there's an element of needing the communication dribbled down to small group leaders in order to disseminate that information to people where there is already strong connection. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Sarah. It's a really good suggestion. Thank you. Any more questions? Steve?
Steve will have his own microphone.
Communication. It's never easy, but are we using all the platforms possible? Where I'm going here is we did have something called a grapevine. It was a piece of paper. And I'm sure there are, I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure there are people who don't receive that email that we get every week, that if they were here on Sunday could pick up similar information. I know it's another job for somebody else, but it's just another platform of communication that we could use. We let it go. I'm not sure why, but yeah.
I think one of the decisions we made was we found that we were doing a lot of printing. A lot of paper was sort of left behind. Yes, it could be recycled, but yeah, we just felt it was making quite an impact. Joe did tell me how many people we've got signed up to the weekly email. It's quite a lot, but appreciate it doesn't catch everyone. Obviously, website is loads better than it was a couple of years ago. Lots of great information, lots of great tools, lots of great communication on there. Look, if that's something that people would love to have back, we can absolutely have a conversation about what that could look like. It could be that we just produce it less often so that you don't have one every week. But have you got a view, John?
I can say some extra things. Steve, it's really nice to have your question. We're talking about this all the time. Joe is the person who has responsibility for the way we communicate. So it's his communication philosophy, and he's not here to talk about it, but I'll get him to say something if that would be helpful. We are talking about, and Lisa is working on actually having a welcome station at the back of the auditorium to catch people on a Sunday, so a point where people can come for information. I think our communication policy is trying to avoid using paper and to use our website and electronic means of communication as our primary way of communicating with people. We would love to communicate people with more people, but GDPR rules mean that we can only do it if they give us permission. So if people want to be communicated with, help them to get on our mailing list and give us permission so we can talk to them. We are always keen to communicate well, and we value your feedback when we're not doing it well. So please keep talking to us about it.
Yeah, I've just noticed in the auditorium just this week that we have a screen up that gives all the activities that are going on in the auditorium that day. I'm assuming that it would be for somebody who's not me, a relatively small job, to just put the information from the email with events and things up on that and have it in the foyer when we come in on a Sunday. And that would do without the paper. So that's just a thought, assuming there's somebody with better tech skills than I have.
Thanks, Darren.
More of a finance one. Great that they have, you put people onto the real living wage. Are there any reviews or anything for cost of living crisis, prices going up or anything? Are there any reviews on it or things being done to see how the church can help people, especially the lower paid in the church?
There's several things that are part of our conversations about the cost of living crisis. One of the things we are looking at, but we have absolutely no details, so this is very much the start of, is just looking at potentially what people who don't necessarily need it are doing with the £400 grant or the winter allowance that people get, and if they don't need it, would they be willing to donate that to someone who really needs it? That kind of idea. But at the moment, it's a lot of conversations, nothing set in stone, but we are having a lot of conversations. We do also have some of our funds are kind of social action funds, so we'll probably have more conversations around what we actively do with them as well. But at the moment, it's very raw conversations, but I think as ideas develop and we kind of take directions, we will obviously communicate them.
Yeah, and with the big move that we made this year was also with, I suppose, start to see what's coming, and I think we'll just keep reviewing that. As we continue to go through the year, as we always would. So,
for our encouragement as part of the church in Yeovil, St Peter's, as of the 1st of October, on the Westfield estate, are going to open up a warm bank. The plan is on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, hours to be decided, to encourage the community to come and socialise, keep warm, be fed in the St Peter's Community Centre over there. If anybody, and as this is going to go out with YCC, if there's anybody that would be interested in wanting to support that, a small amount of time, one size doesn't fit all. It wouldn't necessarily fit here because it's a busy centre, but that's the church taking a lead within Yeovil to reach out to our communities in that regard.
Great, thanks, Steve.
Yeah, the churches of Yeovil, we were meeting, the leaders were meeting quite recently, and there was a good deal of conversation about warm spaces and who and where and what, and I know St Peter's are doing that. I think one or two other congregations are looking at the same, and our limitation here is simply that we are a warm space, we're also a rather full space, but we are keeping that item on our agenda.
Any more questions, thoughts, observations? Going once. No? Very good. This is a helpful forum. I mean, you know, I know that it's called an AGM. We've got a bunch of trustees who are happy to chat anytime, so please feel free to, if you walk out and go, oh, I really wanted to know about, or actually, I've thought about that answer and I want more, then yeah, we're always happy to chat. And thank you so much for all coming. It makes a massive difference. Genuinely, we love it. We love the questions. It's great to get the feedback. It's great. It's honestly great to get the feedback because it helps to make us better. And we spend a lot of time in meetings wondering what people are thinking. And because people don't always tell you what they're thinking. So you find yourself doing stuff and then someone tells you they didn't like it, but they didn't tell you in the first place that they didn't want. Anyway, so we like this. We like this. So please keep the questions coming. And yeah, thank you so much for coming out tonight. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you again to all of our wonderful trustees. Yeah, I think we're done. I think we'll close. Is that okay? Thank you very much. And can we put me back on?